Scotland tonight, giving some hill snow, particularly above about 450 metres. We'll see some settling snow here. And another area of rain moving in from the southwest across England and Wales into the early hours, some of which could be quite heavy, accompanied by blustery winds, particularly towards the southeast. It's mostly a frost-free night with temperatures in mid-single figures. As for Monday, well, we hold on to a very unsettled picture. Low pressure still close by towards the west of the UK. So to start with on Monday, although there'll be some brightness towards the north of mainland Scotland, the rest of the country is likely to see some showery bursts of rain, again with some hill snow in places. Across Northern Ireland there'll be showery bursts of rain as well, and showery too across parts of Wales into the southwest of England. So it's the south and east of England, some central parts too, that are likely to see the best of the early brightness. As we go through the rest of the day on Monday, with low pressure still close by, there'll be further outbreaks of rain at times in pretty much all parts of the UK. Occasional bright spells between, still some winteriness across the hills of Scotland at times, and wherever you are, a pretty blustery day with some gales, particularly down towards the south and southwest at times through the day. And despite some sunshine at times, those temperatures will be struggling. Highs of 6 to 9 Celsius, 9 down towards the southwest. It's 48 in Fahrenheit, but add on the effect of that unsettled weather and feeling much cooler out and about. As for Tuesday, well, with low pressure still over the top of the UK, there'll be further showers to come at times. Again, some of those could be quite heavy at times. The winds do start to ease down, so probably feeling a little bit better when we get the sunshine between those showers, with temperatures still peaking at around the 10 Celsius mark. So Tuesday and Wednesday continue pretty unsettled, further rain at times, but things do start to quieten down later in the week with some sunshine around.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight, You have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained.
Well, there we go. Is Labour putting the interests of Davos globalists above Britain? The government's now mooting plans, get this, to betray Brexit and join a new EU customs deal.
We are absolutely happy to look at these different proposals because we know that the deal that the previous government secured is not working well enough.
She's fresh back from the World Economic Forum. The gaslighting Chancellor now blames Brexit for zero growth and says it's absolutely nothing to do with her own incompetence. Also tonight.
I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well. It's very early, but he's popular.
President Trump says the PM's doing a very good job, yet his approval rating is at a record low. So who's right, and will Starmer even survive his first term? And by the way, who might even take his place? Wes Streeting? He had some thoughts on Nigel Farage today.
I mean, let's not get too carried away about Nigel Farage. Guy gets so much airtime. He got 5 MPs at the last election, and he doesn't shine in the House of Commons.
Ooh, spicy. Joining me on my panel tonight is Will Kingston, Chloe Dobbs and Bill Rammell. And it's been a hell of a week for the weather. Can you guess what happened next? I'll reveal all very shortly. First, though, here's your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock. The top story tonight, well, Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump have agreed to meet soon following a call earlier that highlighted the strong and enduring ties between the UK and the United States. In the conversation, Trump expressed his condolences to the Prime Minister after the loss of his brother and praised his leadership and efforts in office so far. The pair discussed key issues, including Middle East security, with Sir Keir Starmer thanking Donald Trump for his role in the Gaza ceasefire deal. And Trump also welcomed the release of British hostage Emily Damari and spoke warmly of his respect for the royal family. The Home Secretary has warned online platforms they must act now to remove violent content. That's after the Southport killer accessed extremist material before his deadly attack. Axel Rudakabana, who murdered 3 young girls and tried to kill 10 others, downloaded an al-Qaeda training manual and watched graphic footage online before his stabbing spree in July last year. Yvette Cooper says it's unacceptable that such hateful content remains easily available and is urging tech companies to take immediate action ahead of new online safety laws in March. The government has also announced a public inquiry into missed chances to stop Rudakabana, who was already known to police and anti-extremism authorities. And the government is also cracking down on online knife sales after it was revealed the 18-year-old purchased his murder weapon on Amazon when he was just 17 years old. Under tough new rules, buyers will need to show photo ID at the point of purchase and again when the knife is delivered, with packages also banned from being left on doorsteps. And delivery drivers will only be allowed to hand knives to the person who ordered them, in plans set to be featured in the Crime and Policing Bill this spring. The Home Secretary, has said that it is a total disgrace that dangerous weapons are still so easy to get hold of. Well, a 53-year-old man has been charged with the murder of a nurse who was found fatally injured in a street in Plymouth. Paul Butler is accused of killing 48-year-old Claire Chick, who was discovered last Wednesday and later died in hospital. Claire's family say she was a beautiful and a lively soul. Mr Butler is due to appear before Plymouth Magistrates Court on Monday. And 100-mile-an-hour winds have left 2 people sadly dead and thousands without power. Now, though, a new storm named Herminia is adding to the weather chaos, with gusts of up to 80 miles an hour already recorded in Devon and heavy rain sweeping across much of the country. The Met Office has issued warnings for floods, travel disruption and even a danger to life. Floodwaters have already blocked roads and rail lines in Cornwall, with flights also delayed. And coastal areas are set to face crashing waves, with dozens of flood warnings in place as saturated ground is increasing the risk of yet more damage. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good evening to you. Do you ever get the feeling this government cares more about their globalist friends abroad than you and me in Britain?
You have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Oh, silly me, we knew that already, of course. That was the Prime Minister last year in a now infamous admission that he'd rather be swanning around with technocrat billionaires at the World Economic Forum than being in his own country. And Rachel Reeves was doing precisely that at Davos this week.
The budget in October did was draw a line under the economic and financial mismanagement of the Conservative government. I've now put our public finances in order.
In order? I'm not quite sure everything's quite in order. The economy's tanking, everyone's skint, businesses are cutting thousands of jobs and our quality of lives are getting worse. So what happens just days after the Chancellor's visit to her World Economic Forum chums? Well, right on cue, Reeves says she's up for joining an EU customs deal, the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention, as a way of having closer economic ties with Brussels.
We are absolutely happy to look at these different proposals because we know that the deal that the previous government secured is not working well enough.
And in perhaps one of the biggest examples yet of this Labour government gaslighting the electorate, the Chancellor is now going around blaming Brexit for Britain's flatlining GDP. Absolutely nothing to do with her record tax rises, huge public sector pay cuts, or pay rises rather, or her own doom and gloom rhetoric. And let's ignore the facts that we had the fastest growing economy in the G7 last year before Labour took over. No. It's because the plebs, you, voted for independence away from the EU gravy train. Reeves told the Observer newspaper today there are loads of estimates showing the negative impact of Brexit on the UK economy. And she added, what I want to do is get some of that GDP back by having a better trading relationship with the European Union. So there you go, there you have it, black and white from her own mouth. The great Brexit betrayal becomes clearer every day. And while this government is selling us down the river with creepy globalists in Davos, back home in Britain, we're suffering the effects. A family-run bakery in Harrogate announced its closings for good after 119 years in business, after blaming the Chancellor for the final nail in their coffin. Lancaster's bakery blamed the government's hike in employer costs, such as small business rates relief, for the collapse in addition to the spiralling cost of living. So, while Rome burns back home, why is Reeves swanning around Davos anyway? We're told she's there to meet leaders in, quote, the global business community to encourage them to put their money back into the UK and back British business. But let's be clear, she's not even met British farmers that she and her colleagues have so badly thrown under the bus.
People watching you in Davos amongst all these millionaires and you saying, well, I've listened to this community, are wondering why you can't listen to the farmers.
All this points to one clear conclusion, in my mind anyway. It seems Davos man Starmer and Rachel from accounts care more about their billionaire buddies on the world stage than they do about the everyday man and woman and child of this country. And I argue they just don't get Britain. Look what the PM did in the immediate aftermath of Southport. He turned up for 19 seconds, laid some flowers down, and then raced back to Downing Street for a drinks party held for Lovey's celeb Labour donors. What a joke. This week, he called Southport one of the most harrowing moments in our country's history. But it seems that Southport wasn't harrowing enough for the Prime Minister to swerve or cancel that pathetic drink ceremony. So I say again, the PM doesn't get Britain. Just look how he chose to celebrate Burns Night in Scotland this week. Look at this picture. Out of all the pictures he could have chosen to show to the public, Keir Starmer chose to share a snap of him with a drag queen in Downing Street. What's a drag queen got to do with Burns Night, or indeed Scotland? And by the way, Downing Street are still refusing to say why America's biggest private landowner, Bill Gates, and the BlackRock CEO, Larry Fink, were doing in Downing Street just days before the budget. The same budget that threatens the very future of British farming. So, does this government care more about their globalist pals than you and me in Britain? I certainly think so, but let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Joining me tonight is former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, and the political commentator and podcast host Will Kingston. Good evening to you three. Welcome along. Bill, we'll start with you as the Labour contingent on the panel. Do you get the feeling that Starmer and co have too much attention focused on international affairs, their buddies in Davos, the World Economic Forum agenda?
No, I don't, but I do think his response to that BBC journalist, as she then was, saying, where do you prefer to be, Davos or Westminster? And he chose, I think it's about 18 months ago, he chose Davos, was ill-judged. The reality is...
Why did he say it?
I think it was ill-judged. I think the reality is that any government needs to engage with international finance and international businesses, and every government since the year dot has been present at Davos. So it's the right thing to do, but it's about delivering the British national interest. And, you know, you talk about the economy. There are indicators pointing in different directions at the moment. Just 10 days ago, we had the FTSE 100 go through the roof. The IMF upgraded the growth forecasts for the UK.
Yeah, but sorry to say, can I just interject? Trump's taken office again, and the S&P 500's soaring, Nasdaq soaring, and the reason that the FTSE's going up is because the pound's going down. That's why.
Well, the reality is it's going up. That benefits us. And certainly the growth forecasts from the International Monetary Fund are very positive, the strongest in Europe. But we need to deliver on the growth agenda, which is why the announcements around deregulation of planning to make it easier to house build for major infrastructure projects. And I very much welcome as well what looks like being the commitment for a third runway at Heathrow, which can help us to drive growth forward.
All right, maybe even Gatwick as well. Who knows? Will Kingston. Rachel Reeves goes to Davos, rubs shoulders, sipping champers with billionaires, comes back and then days later suggests we're going to be joining this new sort of customs deal with the EU. I mean, what does that say?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second, Ben, but I just want to cover off the growth thing first, because we keep hearing about the growth agenda from Labor, and every initiative I'm hearing is a government infrastructure project. And I'm not necessarily against property deregulation. In fact, I'm all for that. You know, the third runway is a good initiative. But I think that the delusion that we have is that growth is driven by the government and not driven by the private sector. And my concern is that they just don't really comprehend that. Like, they've had 14 years to come up with a growth strategy, and yet we hear that they are now going to the different regulators across the apparatus of government to try and get ideas. So look, we can talk the customs union. I think that's important to talk about, but I just don't understand how they had 14 years and yet we are still struggling to work out how you grow this economy. And I just don't think it's in the instinct of this government, because their only answer is just to pump more money out the door.
Yeah. Chloe, I should have come to you first. I apologise. Ladies first. I've just realised my gaffe. Nothing intended. Do you think Sir Keir Starmer gets Britain?
I don't think he does. I think that, as you say, he is quite happy to be abroad with technocrats because he's not surrounded by the people of Britain who do not like him. He has awful approval ratings here, so he likes to go and escape and hang out with his friends where he's wined and dined and put out in fancy hotels. And Rachel Reeves at it as well, disappearing off to China when she is in hot water and the markets were in an absolute mess. And I think this idea of doing this trade deal with the EU, this is not a customs union. It potentially might be beneficial, but I don't think that they quite understand when you've got a cabinet full of Remainers why we left the EU. We wanted to get away from all of the technocrats. It's not democratic, but they love hanging out with them. They want to go to the WEF. They want to be in Davos rather than here in Britain.
Chloe, the British public don't agree with you. You look at the polling evidence, there's been a reversal. There's now a steady indicators from the polls, 56 to 44 in favour of rejoining the EU. Now, that's not the government's position. The government respects the results of the referendum, but rightly argues we need a better relationship with Europe. We need a closer working relationship with Europe. And I think this proposal that's come from the EU about us joining the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention, which gives us tariff-free access to European markets. It's much broader than the European Union. It's potentially a good one. Yeah. It doesn't bring back free movement of labour. It doesn't bring back any of the other obligations of the single market. So it's worth doing. So, Bill, why at the same time is Rachel Reeves going around and blaming Brexit for sluggish GDP, when the fact is Labour inherited the fastest-growing economy in the G7? Doesn't the Chancellor not take a second to maybe reflect on their own first 6 months in charge and say, well, you know, markets are
guess, are driven by sentiment. We were so doom and gloom. That speech by Keir Starmer in the Rose Garden, his first ever speech, was one of the most depressing things I'd ever heard in my life, and they wonder why markets tanked and inflation soared and the pound dropped. Does Rachel Reeves not ever self-reflect and think, oh, maybe it's my massive tax rises, maybe it's the splurging in public sector pay rises that is damaging growth?
I think you've got to separate the issues. Brexit has been damaging to the UK economy. You know, there's a whole range of forecasters. The average net cost to the UK each year is about £100 billion. That has been damaging. However...
What about Germany? Germany was in recession last year. They didn't leave the EU.
No, of course, the indicators go up and down. But look, I will acknowledge this. I think the tone from Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer immediately after the general election was too negative. Yes, they needed to explain and justify why the public finances were in the state that they were, but I think it was too negative. That did have some downward pressure on growth. I think that is changing, and the deregulatory agenda that they are putting forward is the clear route forward to get us the growth that we need.
With the exception of property, and we'll see how that plays out, they're not putting forward a deregulatory agenda. They want to regulate football, for heaven's sake. Like, I actually think that this, we're hearing deregulation, we're hearing growth, but then the actual actions, and net zero is another very good example, where you're seeing more and more regulation. I think housing is the only area where I've heard anything about deregulation, and that's just because they're going to deregulate in areas that vote Tory anyway, so they're happy to annoy those particular constituents.
Well, Will, you pilloried, going out to the regulators, and it's the regulators that put in place regulations that stymie growth. Rightly, the government is not going out to ask them their view. It's saying we want deregulation proposals. And the fact that Rachel Reeves effectively sacked the chair of the Competition and Markets Authority, because he wasn't embracing that deregulatory agenda, I think is a good indication.
Isn't Will right, though, where he says you've had 14 years to prep yourself, get some ideas together, 6 months in, there's no progress, no growth, and then they're going to the Environment Agency, Ofwat, the CMA, all these bodies for ideas.
We never said growth was going to come within 6 months. The real test of this government will be in 2, 3, 4 years' time, when the impact of what it's doing will I think, begin to be felt. But, there's a long way to go.
Goodness me. I mean, and then they swan off to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, and Rachel Reeves speaks to some billionaires and whoever else and some globalists, and they come back and she says, well, maybe for growth we need to do some sort of EU deal, customs union.
It looks like they didn't do anything during the 14 years that they were sat on the opposition benches. All this talk of deregulation, AI revolution, OK, great, might be a good idea, but why didn't you think of that when you were on the opposition benches? It's now when suddenly it's all gone wrong that they're just trying to think of any idea they possibly can.
From day one of this Labour government, they were talking about deregulation in terms of planning reform, house building and the rest of it. Okay. But it doesn't happen overnight.
All right, just to me, it seems like they've got all the gear and no idea, all Lord Ali's gear and no idea. Anyway, time is running out on your chance to become our biggest ever giveaway winner with an incredible 50k in your bank account. That's some personal growth for you. Totally tax-free, of course, and you can spend it however you want. Here's all the details you need to win.
There's just 5 days left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
All right, up next.
I actually think he's very nice.
Donald Trump's a fan, surprisingly, but can Sir Keir Starmer survive his huge drop in approval ratings and get through his 5-year premiership? We'll debate that in just a second. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it is essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this, and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plea to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah, because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, President Donald Trump has said he thinks Sir Keir Starmer has done, quote, a very good job so far, despite his liberal views. And that's as the Prime Minister confirms that the pair did speak over the phone today and even agreeing to meet soon. So this will come as a boost to the Prime Minister, who's looking to secure a trade deal with the US, of course. That's amid looming threats of Trump tariffs all across Europe. However, in the UK, a new poll shows Mr Starmer's approval rating has dipped to a record low of minus 35%, absolutely plunging to say the least, as only 1 in 10 people think Labour is doing a good job in government. The Prime Minister's also facing intense criticism for allegedly withholding information from the public about the Southport stabbings and the attacker. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, she weighed in to GB News on this morning. Take a look.
What went wrong, in my view, with Keir Starmer is that his initial reaction was to rush to criticise the people who were worried. And yes, of course, some people committed crimes, but he wasn't worried about prejudicing their trials. He was worried about prejudicing this trial. That's where you see the unequal treatment, and that's where we need to be careful.
So, as the British public continues to lose confidence in his government, will the Prime Minister survive a full term? That's the big question, or will he be out the door? We're joined now by Conservative commentator Kane Blackwell and former Labour advisor Stella Santakidou. Good evening to you both. Thank you for your company. Stella, we'll start with you. Is Sir Keir Starmer going to last the distance?
Well, I don't know, Ben, because you're talking about polling and you are asking me whether the recent polling figures mean that Keir Starmer should not last his full term. And you were speaking earlier about what are the polling numbers about how many people want to the UK to rejoin the EU. So I'm wondering, if the question is, should Keir Starmer last the full term because the pollings are bad, does that mean that the UK should rejoin the EU because 56% of the public have decided that now they want to go back to the EU and they didn't want Brexit?
No, the question is, will he survive because of A, his performance thus far, which is questionable, to say the least, and B, because his net approval rating is in the gutter. I think it's probably one of the worst out of any recent modern Prime Minister.
Okay, so great. So we have to decide, was it that before the elections, everything that Keir Starmer was promising and Rachel Reeves was all doom and gloom, or was it that they promised that in the first 6 months we're going to magically find all of these magic money trees and there's going to be amazing growth? Because as far as I remember, the complaint that I keep on hearing from you, Ben, and from others is that Keir Starmer was very negative before the elections. So now that they are finally in government, I do not understand why we are surprised about the fact that it's actually really hard. But to answer your questions, I've been looking through the papers throughout the weekend, and I see so many positive headlines about where this government is growing, so many amazing plans.
Like what?
Yes, because I keep on seeing...
I think we're reading the same papers.
Rachel Reeves, she fired the Competition and Markets Authority head, as you already mentioned, which I think shows...
What does that do for anybody, Stella? Sorry, how does firing the unknown boss of the CMA, most people don't even know what the Competition and Market Authority is.
Because
what does that do for anyone?
That she's willing to take on the institutions which are blocking the UK's growth. That's what it shows.
All right,
it shows
Kane?
she's not afraid of bureaucrats who do not want to serve the British economy.
If that's the headline achievement for this Labour government in 6 months, sacking the head of the CMA, no one knows who that is or what the CMA is. Goodness me. Kane, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, going back to the original question is, will he survive a full term? Is the sad reality, I think he will. And that's only because he has such a large majority and he has so many disposable assets, in a political sense. He can fire ministers when he needs to, replace them with desperate new MPs to climb up the greasy pole. And, a lot of the newbies were hand-selected by Starmer and his team. So, he's not going to get out of this, out of government quite anytime soon, sadly. But I think the real question is, can Britain afford Starmer for 4 more years? I don't think we can. I mean, look what's happened with the economy. The budget, since the budget, the OBR has forecast growth to be lower this time round, to have wage growth lower, to have household income growth lower, inflation higher, and interest rates higher. This is not a good look for this government, and it's not good for the British people. The Rachel Reeves is briefing out, I find it laughable, she's briefing out that she's the Iron Chancellor, the strong Iron Chancellor. She's about as strong as a tin can, Ben.
Oh, Stella, your response to that?
My response is that all I've been seeing on the papers throughout the weekend, is a chancellor who is saying she's going to tackle benefit fraud, she's going to turn Cambridge into Britain's Silicon Valley, she will not tolerate blockers either within the Labour Party or from Green Quangos or from anyone else. And she has also said that she will not be returning to austerity, which was a massive, massive mistake. All of which are things
Stella,
that pro-growth campaigners have been begging for.
Stella, can I just make a polite observation that so far, including your own comments, everything seems to be about Labour will do this, Labour are talking about that, the Chancellor will do this, Sir Keir Starmer's talking in this kind of tone. But can I just ask you, so far, 6 months in, what have Labour done that's really got you going, that's really inspired you?
Ben, do we both live on planet Earth where you can't build houses and you can't build new roads and you can't have a nuclear plant?
So you've got no you can't give an example. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just genuinely interested to know what you think.
Biggest legislative agenda we've had in 2 decades. That's what you're getting. All of this.
I don't know what that means.
The legislative agenda that's already in motion. The main problem the UK has is that we haven't been having long-term investment. Because every government for the last 14 years has been prioritizing short-term gimmicks for headlines rather than committing to long-term projects. You know what I want to see from my government? I want to see a government that doesn't panic from the differences on polling from day to day and the hysterical headlines from the media.
Okay.
I want to see a government that makes adult plans and sticks to them no matter what the changing wind of the headlines and the polling says.
All right. You don't want the government to panic, but I'd argue perhaps that maybe the pensioners who can't afford their heating are panicking, the farmers are maybe panicking about the future of their farms. Kane?
Well, I completely agree. And I think going back to the point is the biggest blocker to growth in this country is Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. You know, you're talking about a new legislative agenda, but it's just more and more regulation. When they've had 14 years to come up with a growth plan. They can't do that. They blame us 14 years. At least we took some action. At least we actually did get things done. They keep talking about it and they actually don't deliver on anything.
Okay.
I mean, the things that they are delivering is actually damaging the fabric of our society and of our country. And it is really, really damaging. And I think the more that this Labour government go on, the worse it will get. OK,
great debate. Thank you both. And you both think that Sir Keir Starmer will be there for the next general election. So you're agreed on that, at least.
Sadly, I mean, unless Red Ange gets a clause into him, we'll see. We don't know.
You never know. Or Wes Streeting. Wes Streeting. You know, I've always said Wes Streeting is probably one of the more competent people in that cabinet. Stella, Kane, thank you very much for your company. Really appreciate it. Good evening to you. Coming up, we'll be joined by former Met Senior Investigating Officer to discuss what was the reason for the Southport murderer. I'm not going to name him again. I'm going to keep this up. I don't think he deserves to be named. What was the reason for his actions? There was a Daily Mail column today from the columnist Peter Hitchens, a friend of the channel, who suggested... I won't tell you what he thought it was, but it did raise some eyebrows. Stick around to find out more. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. During the week ahead, we hold on to unsettled weather across the UK, further wet and windy weather to come, although signs of an improvement later on in the week. At the moment, low pressure is anchored towards the west of the UK. That's dominating our weather. Tightly packed isobars indicating pretty blustery conditions, and these weather fronts moving in from the south and southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain at times. One band of rain affects Scotland tonight, giving some hill snow, particularly above about 450 metres, where we'll see some settling snow here. And another area of rain moving in from the southwest across England and Wales into the early hours, some of which could be quite heavy, accompanied by blustery winds, particularly towards the southeast. It's mostly a frost-free night, with temperatures in mid-single figures. As for Monday, well, we hold on to a very unsettled picture. Low pressure still close by towards the west of the UK. So to start with on Monday, although there'll be some brightness towards the north of mainland Scotland, the rest of the country is likely to see some showery bursts of rain, again with some hill snow in places. Across Northern Ireland, there'll be showery bursts of rain as well, and showery too across parts of Wales into the southwest of England. So it's the south and east of England, some central parts too, that are likely to see the best of the early brightness. As we go through the rest of the day on Monday, with low pressure still close by, there'll be further outbreaks of rain at times in pretty much all parts of the UK. Occasional bright spells between, still some winteriness across the hills of Scotland at times, and wherever you are, a pretty blustery day with some gales, particularly down towards the south and southwest at times through the day. And despite some sunshine at times, those temperatures will be struggling. Highs of 6 to 9 Celsius, 9 down towards the southwest. It's 48 in Fahrenheit, but add on the effect of that unsettled weather and feeling much cooler out and about. As for Tuesday, well, with low pressure still over the top of the UK, there'll be further showers to come at times. Again, some of those could be quite heavy at times. The winds do start to ease down, so probably feeling a little bit better when we get the sunshine between those showers, with temperatures still peaking at around the 10 Celsius mark. So Tuesday and Wednesday continue pretty unsettled, further rain at times, but things do start to quieten down later in the week with some sunshine around.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hello, welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. Now, did you see in the Mail on Sunday today, columnist and friend of the channel, Peter Hitchens, he penned a controversial column saying that the Southport killer turned into a violent monster from around age 13 because of marijuana use, smoking weed. Peter Hitchens wrote, Ruda Bacana is not a terrorist, any more than Paddington Bear is a terrorist. The idea is idiotic. He's plainly crazy, as are many of those who kill on our streets. This comes, of course, as the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has demanded online platforms remove harmful videos from their websites in the wake of the horror after it was found that Ruda Bacana accessed extremist material, including an Al-Qaeda training manual and videos of school shootings. And crucially today, this is interesting, Nigel Farage has even backed up that call, saying that one video in particular, said to have been watched by the killer on X, formerly Twitter, now run, of course, by his on-off friend Elon Musk, should be taken down. It was an indirect request to Elon Musk to take the video down. So who or what inspired the Southport monster to kill? Joining me now is former Met Senior Investigating Officer Peter Kirkham. Peter, good evening. First of all, what's your thoughts on Peter Hitchens' comments in the Mail on Sunday saying that pot and weed is to blame? He was smoking weed from a young age and that just turned his brain to mush.
I think Peter Hitchens would be the first to admit he's got no evidence on which to base that. He said, I think the headline said he had a sneaking suspicion, and that's what it amounts to. He's had a bee in his bonnet about cannabis and its effect on young people for a very long time.
Yeah.
Without any shadow of a doubt, it does have a detrimental effect on some individuals. I'm not aware of the detail of research that's been done around exactly who it affects, exactly what strains of cannabis have that effect, what amount of use has to be undertaken before you have those effects. But it does have some damage. And I think that's pretty much accepted by everybody.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the case here.
No, I mean, I have plenty of friends from school, well, people I knew at school who were smoking cannabis from a very young age in high school. They turned into complete mutes by the time we got to 19, 20 years old. I know what kind of damage it does do, but I just wonder, you know, cannabis is smoked by a lot of people all across the country, all across the world. They don't all go on to commit horrors like this Southport chap. What about then what about the videos and the online content? Rachel Reeves and Peter Kyle have written to social media sites. Is there any role to play there?
Yeah, that's a massive problem. Young people now spend ever more time just in front of a screen in their bedrooms, be that on a smartphone or laptop or tablet, with nobody from their family seeing them and seeing what they're looking at. They get involved in chat rooms and various other things where they discuss these things, and they're seeing things that simply should not be being seen by young people. Some of them shouldn't really be being seen by most people, let alone children. The internet is a wild west. It's pretty uncontrolled, and that is a really significant issue. Whether or not there's a specific link, that's always what's missing. People go, well, you know, it's had this effect. So yes, well, where's the specific link? And that's very difficult to achieve and almost impossible to achieve, making that specific link. But that's not to say that there isn't any harm there. There will be.
OK. Just briefly on this, Peter, today, I'm not sure if you saw, but there were reports that this guy, Ruda Bacana, had been attacked in prison. The Ministry of Justice came quickly out and corrected all this. I guess it was misinformation online, saying absolutely not. We understand at GBNews he's in segregation and actually can't be accessed by any other prisoners. Do you, I was going to say fear for his safety in prison, but I shouldn't think you care. But do you think there's a chance that in the future something could happen to him?
I think it's inevitable that something will happen to him. If you look at the other notorious prisoners over the years, for example, the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, he was imprisoned in, I think it was at the early 1980s, and there were still serious attacks on him taking place in 2007, 25, 26 years later. And it will happen, undoubtedly. Someone will want to make a name for themselves. And yeah, it will happen. So segregation is going to be an awful lot of his time, I think.
OK, Peter, thanks very much. Appreciate your company this evening. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now on this. Will, Bill and Chloe. Will, drugs, is it just, Peter Hitchens, to his defence, did say he had a sneaking suspicion. He wasn't directly blaming it on cannabis, but does it even matter?
Yeah, I really like Peter, but this is one of the laziest pieces of journalism I have seen. I think the logic was young people sometimes take cannabis. A very small percentage of young people who take cannabis go nuts. Therefore, without any evidence, this young person took cannabis and went nuts. It's ridiculous. And it just goes to show that people are finding any way to put their particular issue injected into the conversation, but avoiding the controversial things that we really need to talk about.
Yeah, I like Peter, but as Peter Kirkham just said, he has had a long affiliation with, or problem with cannabis and whatever else. Bill, your thoughts?
Well, I've always found Peter a bit bonkers, and this article just reinforces that.
No, he's not. He's a clever chap.
Well, I mean, come on, there's not one iota of evidence to back up the central claims that he's making. And I actually think that's an insult to the families of these girls who were tragically murdered. They deserve better than that. And I really am irked by his casual dismissal of describing Ruda Cabana as a terrorist. The overly narrow definition of terrorism is one of the problems that we face, and that's what the public inquiry needs to get to the bottom of, because what that means in practice is that the resources of Prevent are not used to go after loners and misfits like Ruda Cabana, and that's a risk to all of us.
Stop speaking like that, Bill. You won't be invited back as the lefty on this channel. That's common sense.
I mean, to me, it seemed like that article that Peter Hitchens did tried to draw a false dichotomy between being mentally unwell and being a terrorist. And the point you make about Prevent also potentially making this false dichotomy just seems completely wrong. I'm sure the vast majority of people that are terrorists are also pretty mentally deluded and crazy in the head, right? So this kid clearly needed help mentally. NHS, a lot of problems there. And I doubt that it's down to just weed or one small thing. I'm sure maybe he had some messed up problems in his childhood, whatever. But when these people become violent and they cause problems, action needs to be taken straight away. All of this talk about social media and whatnot and weed, I think, is just a distraction from the failures of our institutions to stop him when he was referred 3 times, when he was violent at school. He hit someone with a hockey stick. He had a kill list at school. Why wasn't something done then to control this boy?
Yeah, I think that's the important conversation to have, not why did he do it, so why wasn't he stopped, why wasn't he picked up?
Yeah, the Amazon killer, blame it on the knife.
Yeah, exactly. What a load of nonsense. Just very quickly then, this debate, I mean, it's a free speech debate, I guess. Should people on platforms like X, Twitter, Elon Musk, should they take down sort of grim videos online?
I mean, I am very pro-free speech, but I think that anything that incites violence explicitly should not be on the internet. An Al-Qaeda training manual, for example, that explicitly incites violence, I should think. So that shouldn't be online. It's very hard to control.
They should do what is required by the law and not do anything further.
Yeah. Bill, freedom of speech is based on rights and responsibilities, and yes, you have a right to freedom of speech, but you have a responsibility not to allow material that is being used by utterly unscrupulous individuals to motivate their hatred and their propensity for killing. And yes, X should bring these videos down.
Yeah, OK, yeah, very interesting that Nigel Farage today, he was asked on the wider debate about taking videos down, not just about Elon Musk, but he was then pressed by the interviewer who said, does that apply the same to Elon Musk then? Your friend, your acquaintance, would you urge him to take the videos down? And he said, yes. Anyway, coming up, take a look at this.
I mean, let's not get too carried away about Nigel Farage. Guy gets so much airtime. He got 5 MPs at the last election, and he doesn't shine in the House of Commons.
Things are getting spicy from the Health Secretary Wes Streeting on Nigel Farage and Reform. Reform spokesperson Anne Widdecombe will be joining us to discuss the war of words between Wes and Nigel. Plus, can you guess what happened next in that video? I'll reveal all very shortly. This is Ben Leo Tonight on GB News.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs. You know, remember they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin. And the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, Health Secretary Wes Streeting's been doubling down on his war of words with Nigel Farage with, I guess, some pretty scathing comments. Take a listen.
Nigel Farage achieved a breakthrough at the last election with 5 MPs. I think the Greens got roughly the same number, 4 or 5. No one's saying, Carla Denyer, come on down. Are you the next progressive Prime Minister in our country? Ed Davey got the best result the modern Liberal Party has ever achieved. The Liberal Democrats have never got that many MPs. No one's saying, step forward Prime Minister Ed Davey.
You didn't mention him in your speech, Wes, to be fair.
For Ed Davey mania hasn't happened. I do think there has become this obsession. I do think it's kind of driven by social media, what has reach, what gets clicked, like serve the clicks, get the reach rather than provide the serious analysis. I mean, let's not get too carried away about Nigel Farage. Guy gets so much airtime. He got 5 MPs at the last election and he doesn't shine in the House of Commons.
Oh, there we go. What do you reckon? Are Streeting and Labour rattled by reform? It comes, of course, when reform are surging in the polls, topping a national poll ahead of Labour and the Tories for the first time in recent days and massively closing the gap in another. Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say. I'm joined now by Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. Anne, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me. What do you make of the Health Secretary's comments about Nigel and you guys?
Well, I think, as you've indicated yourself, he's rattled. He's very, very rattled. And it isn't only that we're performing well in the polls, it is also that Nigel Farage's approval ratings are going up, while Keir Starmer's are going down. So if you ask the general public what they want, it isn't Wes Streeting's version. And Nigel has got them rattled. We have overtaken the membership of the Tories. We have certainly overtaken the Tories now in poll after poll. We've either been very close to or in one poll on top of Labour. We're moving, and we're going to do it. And we've got 4 more years in which to do it. I think it will have to change his tune.
Yeah, so you think he is rattled, got it. What do you make of the fact that a lot of these local council elections are going to be cancelled? I mean, Nigel Farage has called it an attack on democracy. Is it, in your opinion, a deliberate attempt from Labour to stop your momentum?
I don't think it's that. I think it is an attack on democracy because, I think council elections should always go ahead. So I think it probably is an attack on democracy. But on the other hand, I don't think it's specifically aimed at reform. I think Labour's pretty scared in general, and they've every reason to be. I mean, no government in my lifetime, at any rate, has collapsed in public approval in such a short space of time. You usually have a honeymoon period.
So, in your opinion, Anne, what have Labour done wrong so far? I mean, I know it's probably an easy question to answer.
Where do we start? Yeah, right, OK. They come in and the first thing they do is cancel the winter fuel allowance. So some of the poorest pensioners just above the benefits line are not actually going to get their winter fuel allowance. Then they decided to attack food production in this country through their changes to inheritance tax for farmers. Then above all, they've put up prices for employers to such an extent that we've now got unemployment rising. And we will have businesses closing because you can't survive if you've got too many costs. So wherever you look, Labour have failed, and they have failed disastrously. And above all, they failed on the small boats. There's no policy there. Stop the gangs, he says. But, meanwhile, they're coming in by the hundreds every day.
But I guess, Anne, in their defence, if they were here, and I mean, Bill Ramell's here, we'll chat to him in a second, but if they were here, they'd say, for example, on the economy, they inherited a massive black hole, it was an absolute mess. You don't buy it?
I don't buy it. B, having talked the country down solidly for 6 months since they came in, they've suddenly realised that, according to Rachel Reeves, they need a bit of positivity. Well, what have they done towards contributing to positivity? They've actually talked the country down. That is one of the worst things any government can do. You want to boost your country.
Wes Streeting says that Nigel Farage has a miserable outlook, and that's all he does.
Well, he's linked that specifically to the health service, if you watch the entire speech. And, of course, we're the ones who want a thriving health service, who want the tax incentives for the doctors and nurses, the retention incentives, who want to take the cap off the numbers in medical training. We're the ones who want all that. We're the ones who want a thriving, bubbling NHS. They're the miserable ones who won't do anything any different.
Yeah, OK. And just lastly, Anne, whilst I've got you, Wes Streeting said that Nigel Farage doesn't particularly shine in the Commons as an MP. You've been there, or were in there for many, many years. Is Nigel Farage a good MP? Does he shine in Parliament?
Yes, I think Nigel Farage is a very good MP. I think all our Reform MPs, albeit there are only 5 of them, are all good MPs, are all making their mark. Nobody dominates the House of Commons day after day, but certainly Nigel has made a huge impact, and that is why the polls are doing what they're doing. If he'd just gone away and kept quiet, polls wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. OK, Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much. I really enjoy your company. Thank you for being with me this evening. Bill Ramell, just to you very quickly. Anne Widdecombe says Labour and Wes Streeting are rattled by reform.
No, look, I'm not going to claim that Labour is doing brilliantly in the polls, but look at the Mail on Sunday this morning. Preferred Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, 10% ahead of Nigel Farage, 20% ahead of Kemi Badenoch. And I think Wes is right to throw the spotlight back on Farage. You know, he's on the record as being in favour of an insurance-based funding model for the National Health Service. He's committed to £70 billion worth of cuts in public spending. That's not where the British people are.
OK, coming up at 10 o'clock, the big breaking stories from all of tomorrow's newspapers, including on the front page of the Financial Times. President Trump dropped jaws today by suggesting pretty radical plans for Gaza and his explosive row with Colombia after the country refused to accept a plane full of its own illegal migrants to America. This is Ben Leo's Tonight, only on GB News. First, though, let's get your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. During the week ahead, we hold on to unsettled weather across the UK, further wet and windy weather to come, although signs of an improvement later on in the week. At the moment, low pressure is anchored towards the west of the UK. That's dominating our weather. Tightly packed isobars indicating pretty blustery conditions, and these weather fronts moving in from the south and southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain at times. One band of rain affects Scotland tonight, giving some hill snow, particularly above about 450 metres, where we'll see some settling snow here. And another area of rain moving in from the southwest across England and Wales into the early hours, some of which could be quite heavy, accompanied by blustery winds, particularly towards the southeast. It's mostly a frost-free night, with temperatures in mid-single figures. As for Monday, well, we hold on to a very unsettled picture. Low pressure still close by towards the west of the UK. So to start with on Monday, although there'll be some brightness towards the north of mainland Scotland, the rest of the country is likely to see some showery bursts of rain, again with some hill snow in places. Across Northern Ireland, there'll be showery bursts of rain as well, and showery too across parts of Wales into the southwest of England. So it's the south and east of England, some central parts too, that are likely to see the best of the early brightness. As we go through the rest of the day on Monday, with low pressure still close by, there'll be further outbreaks of rain at times in pretty much all parts of the UK. Occasional bright spells between, still some winteriness across the hills of Scotland at times, and wherever you are, a pretty blustery day with some gales, particularly down towards the south and southwest at times through the day. And despite some sunshine at times, those temperatures will be struggling. Highs of 6 to 9 Celsius, 9 down towards the southwest. It's 48 in Fahrenheit, but add on the effect of that unsettled weather and feeling much cooler out and about. As for Tuesday, well, with low pressure still over the top of the UK, there'll be further showers to come at times. Again, some of those could be quite heavy at times. The winds do start to ease down, so probably feeling a little bit better when we get the sunshine between those showers, with temperatures still peaking at around the 10 Celsius mark. So Tuesday and Wednesday continue pretty unsettled, further rain at times, but things do start to quieten down later in the week with some sunshine around.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Ben Leo Tonight and breaking tonight. Colombia cave into Donald Trump's tariff threats after the country refused to take a plane full of illegal migrants from Colombia back to their home nation. Trump threatened to whack them with 50% charges on imports, and now guess what? Colombia have caved. He's also getting tough on Hamas as the president threatens a total clear-out of Gaza. We'll reveal where the 1.5 million Palestinians will be shared across the Middle East. A busy first week for the new US president. We've also been discussing Wes Streeting on the show tonight on the front of tomorrow's I newspaper. Here it is. The Health Secretary's overhaul of the NHS is to include more patients treated, guess where? At home. A powerful front page as the Daily Express marks the 80th anniversary of the Holocaust. Lots of events going on with that next week. And it's been a hell of a week for the weather. Joining me on my panel tonight is Will Kingston, Chloe Dobbs and Bill Rammell. Very good evening to you. Welcome along. Another big hour to come, including all the front pages and the stories that dominate them, coming up in just a tick. But first, let's get your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 10 o'clock. The top story tonight. Well, the Home Secretary has warned online platforms they must act now to remove violent content after the Southport killer accessed extremist material before his deadly attack. Axel Rudakabana, who murdered 3 young girls and tried to kill 10 others, downloaded an Al-Qaeda training manual and watched graphic footage online just before his stabbing spree. Yvette Cooper says it's unacceptable that such hateful content remains easily available and is urging tech companies to take immediate action ahead of new online safety laws in March. The government has also announced a public inquiry into missed chances to stop Rudakabana, who was already known to police and anti-extremism authorities. And the government is also cracking down on online knife sales after it was revealed Axel Rudakabana purchased his murder weapon on Amazon when he was just 17 years old. Under tough new rules, buyers will need to show photo ID at the point of purchase and again when the knife is delivered, with packages banned from being left on doorsteps. Delivery drivers will only be allowed to hand knives to the person who ordered them, in plans set to feature in the Crime and Policing Bill this spring. The Home Secretary says it is a total disgrace that dangerous weapons are still so easy for children to get hold of. The Chancellor has dropped a major hint she'll back Heathrow's third runway, saying it could boost the economy and align with the government's climate goals. Rachel Reeves told broadcasters today that advances in electric aviation mean flights could land quicker, cut fuel usage and cut delays. However, she did stress the decision will need full cabinet backing after opposition from some senior Labour figures. Her comments come as the government gears up to announce airport expansions, with campaigners warning a third runway at Heathrow could be risky and costly. The final announcement is expected in a speech later next week. In other news, a 19-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a police officer was seriously injured when a car was driven at her. The officer had approached the vehicle after reports of suspicious activity but was struck by the car, which drove at high speed. She remains in hospital but is recovering well, while the force's chief inspector has called the incident truly shocking and condemned attacks on officers as completely unacceptable. The officer is now being supported by her colleagues. Israel has blocked thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning to northern Gaza after accusing Hamas of breaching a fragile ceasefire. It comes after Hamas freed 4 Israeli female soldiers, with Israel responding by releasing 200 Palestinian prisoners. But the Israeli government insists Palestinians won't be allowed north until Hamas releases Israeli civilian Arbel Yihad, as agreed in the original deal. And fierce winds have hit southwest England tonight as the UK is bracing for more rain and high gales as another Storm Hermine, sweeps in. 80-mile-an-hour gusts have been recorded in Cornwall, with coastal areas at risk of reaching 70-mile-an-hour winds later tonight. And earlier, 2 men sadly died after falling trees struck their cars during another storm, while thousands have been left without power. Rain warnings are also in place across England and Wales, with up to 80 millimetres expected in some areas, risking flooding. Those are the latest headlines. One final update from me in around an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Ben.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome along. We're going to deep dive into tomorrow's front pages. Let's start with the Financial Times, which has just dropped. Colombian President Gustavo Petro, this makes me laugh, he's offering his presidential plane to help deport migrants from the US. The announcement comes hours after Colombia blocked a US military deportation flight from entering the country, saying that the country, the United States, quote, can't treat Colombian migrants like criminals. Trump responded by saying he was imposing emergency 25% tariffs on Colombia and threatening an extra 50% within a week if the problem wasn't sorted. Meanwhile, on the front page of the Daily Express, have we got this? Oh, we're going to stay with the Financial Times. More Trump... there's the Daily Express. There we go, back to the FT. More Trump rhetoric, this time on the Palestinian-Israel situation. He's threatened a clear-out of Gaza, whatever that means. We'll discuss that with the panel in just a second. He sparked outrage with the comments as he's asking neighbouring countries such as Egypt and Jordan to take in around 1.5 Palestinians as he aims, as he said, that quote, to clean out Gaza. Trump said he'd made the request to Jordan's King Abdullah and planned to ask Egypt's president on Sunday too. Describing Gaza as a demolition site, Trump said, "You're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing." He added that the move could be temporary or could be long-term. Let's move on to the Daily Express. Never forget is the headline. An image of a Holocaust survivor there quoted, "You don't think you live in a world which does those things." 80 years tomorrow, January the 27th, after liberation of Auschwitz. And we will cover that in depth tomorrow as well. The newspaper, A&E patients may be treated at home in Wes Streeting's overhaul of the NHS. So this is the big reveal coming tomorrow. More A&E patients are expected to be seen at home and in new local treatment hubs under Wes Streeting's plans to overhaul and reform NHS England. Urgent and life-threatening cases will still see medics in hospital and A&E. Well, that's good to know. It's reassuring. The Metro, smuggler gangs logged out. Migrants offered prizes to refer a friend. I mean, this is ridiculous. Let's read this quickly. More than 8,000 social media accounts used to promote people smuggling have been shut down as part of efforts to stop dangerous channel boat crossings. Sounds like supermarket-style offers to people trying to make their way to the United Kingdom. What a joke. I'm back with my panel. Bill, Chloe, Will, welcome back. Should we talk about this Colombia situation? Will Kingston, I know it tickled you quite deeply earlier this evening. And actually, it's a very serious issue because we were talking about how Labour have struggled to get anything done in 6 months. Donald Trump, within 5 or 6 days, is really laying down the gauntlet.
Yeah, this is one of the most delicious little stories I think I can remember seeing in some time.
Just remind us what's happened chronologically in case nobody knows.
So the US have very quickly moved to deport criminal illegal migrants from the country. They had 2 planes of illegal migrants of Colombian heritage who have been sent back to Colombia. The Colombian president then said, no, sorry, we're not going to take those migrants, put it in the too hard basket. Now, I imagine he's probably expecting a Keir Starmer-like response and dithering, oh, OK, human rights law, we're going to take them back. Trump, in the space of 20 minutes, and this has all been done on social media, Truth Social Diplomacy says, right, no, bad luck. In response to this, we're going to put 25% emergency tariffs on you. We're going to stop your officials from entering the United States. We're going to put, I think, 3 or 4 other measures to say we're going to make life very difficult for you.
Banning diplomats, banning government officials.
This has all gone out on Truth Social. And I was watching this on my phone, and the next thing you know, from CNN, they're reporting not only have the Colombians caved, they are offering the presidential plane to help get these illegal migrants over to Colombia. So what does this say? This says 2 things. Number one, it says that for too long we've forgotten that strength in diplomacy matters and is effective. We've had weak leadership from Biden for 4 years. We've got weak leadership in the UK now, and you see that doesn't get you anywhere. But the second thing I would say is I would wager that response from Trump to the Colombian president was drafted well before the election.
You think they knew this might happen, the deportation?
And this is the thing. This is a very different Trump administration for the first time around. They're much more prepared. They're much more focused. They're much more strategic. And I think if you are interested in international security and the future of the US and the Western world, I think that's a very good sign.
Chloe, as Will suggested, isn't it amazing this is all happening online on social media? You can follow international diplomacy rows in real time.
I know, I mean, it's brilliant how quickly we get our updates on Twitter, far quicker than we get from the news these days. Absolutely fantastic what Trump has done in just a few days. ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they arrested 308 migrants on Trump's first day. And I think Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer take some notes. Why can't we do the same thing? All the people that come across on a boat from France, put them on a coach or a plane back to France, and if they don't accept the plane or the coach full of people, say, right, that's it, we will end all trade with France, we'll create absolute hell for you. You were given £500 million from the Brits to stop these, you failed, so pay the price.
Come on then, Bill Remmel, why can't we do that?
Reality check. The Biden administration deported more migrants in every year that Biden was in office than any of the best years of Trump's first presidency.
Can I tell you why?
We found out he was secretly flying a load of them in. And then they put them in all the swing states as well.
Can I tell you why?
Is what I've said not true?
No,
it is true.
Probably. I don't know, but probably. I'll take your word for it. But can I tell you probably why? The answer to that is because they let in so many millions of people in the southern border. If you've got tens more millions of people coming in, there's more people to
go say what you just said to people who live in places
we're
like
talking
Texas,
about deportations which matter, and Biden had a better record than Trump did. Now, you know, what's happened today is a demonstration of US power, and we need returns to be increased across the globe. But something that really frustrates me is that our government isn't good at telling a good story, because deportations under this government in the last 6 months are up by 30%. We've got record flights taking people out of this country, both convicted criminals and failed asylum seekers. And I think the government needs to communicate more effectively what it's doing.
Yeah, they need to sort out the inflows. I think that's the real issue. They may be doing well on deportations, but if you've got hundreds and thousands coming in, it doesn't matter how many you're deporting because the inflows are still going to be greater.
Well, we haven't got hundreds of thousands coming in.
Hundreds and thousands.
And one of the big problems in this debate is that the boat crossings, which need to be tackled, are an incredibly small proportion, 3% of the net migration figures. The scandal is the Tories let it go up to $1 million.
You don't know who they are.
I'm not supporting the Tories.
And it's a national security threat. That is the issue with that. And they're all in hotels at the taxpayers' expense. $6 billion a year on the asylum system. Meanwhile, we're cutting winter fuel payments, freezing to save $1.5 billion.
And we've got a parliament-long commitment to end hotel use, but you can't do it overnight.
Just sticking with Donald Trump very quickly, he's, I mean, the wording of this statement to do with Gaza, Israel, seems a little close to the mark. He said we need to clear out Palestine, Bill, and put 1.5 million Palestinians in either Egypt or Jordan. And what do you make of that plan?
It's actually shocking. I mean, look, I'll give credit where it's due. I think what Trump did in concert with Biden to bring about a ceasefire in Gaza was very positive. But depopulating Gaza, go back to the origin of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and depopulating areas of the country was part of the origin of this problem. What you need is Palestinian leadership within the Gaza territories. You need Arab countries to police that. You need the EU to be policing that. And we need both Gaza and the West Bank to effectively become part of the two-state solution.
Well, I guess in Trump's defence, he's saying that the place is just demolished now.
Yeah,
it's raised to the ground, so just clear it up.
I saw Bill off camera cringing with these words, and this is the problem, I think, with a lot of the left, is that they hear the rhetoric and they actually miss the point that what he's saying is indisputable. It is a demolition site. Whether you like it or not, people can't live there and they won't be able to live there for some time, so they need to find an alternative arrangement. And the most obvious one is the culturally compatible societies that are in the Middle East, like Egypt and Jordan. The real question is, why is Western liberal democracies bending over backwards to bring these people in, and Egypt and Jordan, those countries, are refusing to allow them? The obvious answer is because they are radicalised, yet for some reason we're happy to take them and they're not.
Do you know what? Go to the settlements, and I visited the settlements as a minister, and they are like bomb sites. If anyone said that those people should be expelled, you know, you'd have Trump and others.
They cannot live there.
Throwing at the bit.
I
you need a
presume
settlement.
it will be made optional, but let's wait for the detail. Clear out obviously sounds quite extreme. We'll wait for the detail of that. But I think for me, the question I am asking when I see this ceasefire deal and the plans going forward is, what on earth are we going to do to make sure that Hamas are not the ones in charge of Gaza? Else this is all just going to happen again. The place is run by terrorists. Let's not forget this is a terrorist organisation. And you'll notice that suddenly they all found their Hamas uniforms again after they were in civilian clothes. As soon as the ceasefire was announced, I saw videos of tons of them all running around with their Hamas headbands on.
Pretty well fed to me as well.
Yeah, these people are crazy, and we cannot have them running Gaza and running Palestine, because else October 7th will happen again.
Absolutely right, but you need the Arab countries to be part of that solution, and you don't get that by these kind of pronouncements from Trump that we're just going to clear them out.
Why are the Arab countries not taking these people?
Listen to countries like Saudi Arabia, who've taken a very reasoned stance that post a ceasefire, they would be prepared to become part of the solution, and we should be pushing for that.
The reason why the West has so many migrants making dangerous journeys all the way from the Arab world is because the countries in that region do not want to take them. They've got strict border control. Until the West, like Trump, puts their foot down and says, you guys take your fair share or else, we are going to continue to be swamped in the West with these people arriving on our shores.
Chloe, the Arab countries have not got strict border control. They're virtually porous.
Well, they don't want the Palestinians for a reason.
No, because of the refugee camps.
Between Egypt and Gaza, there are a million fences and walls because
but that's a particular example because
they are worried
of
about
Israel.
the fact that the population is very indoctrinated there, and many of them will be radical. We've seen Hamas disguising themselves as civilians. Are they going to sneak through into Egypt?
OK. Yeah.
And you need the Arab states to come on side and be part of the solution.
We'll end that there just for the time being because I want to get onto the eye very, very quickly. This breaking story that Wes Streeting says A&E patients may be treated at home in his overhaul of the NHS. Will Kingston, this sounds absolutely bonkers.
Well, I don't know the detail of this, but the fact of the matter is, you know, if it's the difference between getting treatment and not getting treatment, I guess it's better than nothing. It just goes to show the structural issues in the NHS, which, you know, now we're having band-aid solutions to try and solve as opposed to really deep structural reform.
But you know what, Bill? We talk about the NHS and throwing money at it and doing all these weird and wacky plans, but yet at the same time, Labour seem to have no problem with migration, which was one of the main contributors.
It's not true Labour's got no problem with net migration. We want to dramatically reduce it, but you're not going to do that overnight. But you say this is bonkers, Ben. This is about, for people who haven't got life-threatening conditions, to actually be treated in the community through local diagnostic centres, and yes, some of them at home. And actually, I think most people with minor injuries, faced with the prospect of going into A&E and spending hours there rather than being treated at home, I think they choose the latter.
Well, one time I had to go to A&E just because I had cut my knees and I didn't want to be that person being there holding up the wait times, but I called 111 and they said that your only option is A&E, off you go. And I sat there all the way through the night until 5 a.m. just to have someone...
How long? How many hours?
I think I was there like 5 or 6
I've done a 12-hour stint in A&E once for...
The thing is, I'm happy for them to experiment. We need to change the structure of the NHS, and if they want to experiment, try it, see if it works. If it fails, then fine, go for it.
The only concern is, are you going to be getting the same level of care at home when you're slumped on your sofa, a doctor or a nurse comes out to you, as you would have in a hospital, you know, in a proper medical environment?
Well, one, a lot of them are going to be in...
How does this save time and money if they've got to come to my house?
Part of the shift the government is envisaging bringing about is a shift from hospitals towards community care through local diagnostic centres and treatment centres, and that is a good thing.
Yeah. OK. All right, we'll be back in just a tick with some more papers, but first, time's running out on your chance to become the biggest ever giveaway winner with an incredible 50k in your bank, all tax-free, in our Great British Giveaway. Here's all the details you need to win.
There's just 5 days left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
All right, very good luck to you. Just breaking, which we'll hope to get you just after the break or soon after the break. In the Times tomorrow, Keir Starmer apparently is set to resist Donald Trump's calls for increased defence spending in Britain. So Keir Starmer and Number 10 are saying that, look, public finances are in just such a mess, we can't commit to a boost in spending to 2.5% of GDP for NATO. So, I mean, what happened to the election pledges during the campaign trail? Rishi Sunak said he'd bump it up. Keir Starmer said he'd do the same. Now it seems the tune has changed. Are they blaming that £22 billion black hole again? But next, just after the break, I'll speak to a local resident in Leeds who's helped clean up a memorial to a hero police officer shot dead in Leeds in 1984. Plus, this is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
According to a report from the RAC, many drivers see speed limits as a target rather than anything else. More than 50% of us think it's acceptable to break the speed limit.
So this morning we're asking, is it time to increase the motorway speed limit?
Let's talk to automotive journalists Danny Kelly and Steve Fowler. Gents, what a pleasure to speak to you both in one go.
I think we should join many countries in the European Union that have 130 kilometres speed limit, which is around about 81 miles an hour. I drive to London on a weekly basis, and I think the roads are capable of handling higher speeds. I think unofficially the speed limit, without getting pulled over by the local police at the time, is probably around about 78, 80 miles an hour. If a Bobby's on the motorway doing 70 miles an hour, he wants you to overtake him. He wants the free-flowing of that motorway to continue.
So should we change 70 miles an hour? You know, if people are going 80 miles an hour, just stick to 70 miles an hour as a limit. Yes, you know, it's funny when you're driving along the motorway and there's a police car going at 70 and nobody wants to overtake. But if the average is 80, just leave it at 70.
All the gantries now are fitted with the modern signage where they can change the limit at will. We all know that. It's hard to get up to 70 half the time. So, actually, we could apply those rules, couldn't we, at 80 or even 90 miles an hour? and say, well, if the weather's bad, let's reduce it. If the fog's bad, let's reduce it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I hate to use this phrase, smart motorways, but they're the ones where you have the adjustable limits. They don't cover all of the motorway network, relatively small amount of the motorway network. It is a limit. You know, it's not a target, as I keep saying to my kids. God, they're bored of me saying that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. I've got a quick text from a friend of the show, Dr. Renee Honderkamp, talking about Wes Streeting's plans to have people treated, well, A&E patients treated at home. Dr. Renee said, well, she echoed Chloe's comments, actually. She said, where will they get the staff to treat these people at home? It's a joke. A&E is loaded with people who should be seen by a GP, but we don't have the capacity. Very interesting. Let us know what you think about that, gbnews.com/your say. Now, let me bring you a rather touching story. A memorial to a hero policeman who died in the line of duty was vandalised with black paint in the early hours of Sunday morning. That's according to Leeds Police. Sergeant John Speed was shot and killed after going to the aid of a colleague who was fired on during a routine check on 2 suspicious men in October 1984. And his memorial was first unveiled in Kirkgate in June of 1986. If you're local to Leeds or Yorkshire, you may be familiar with the story. Locals, though, have today come together to clean up the damage. One of those locals, Paul Cockcroft, joins us now. Paul, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me. Just explain what happened with this vandalism. Any idea who was responsible yet, and what action did you take in the aftermath?
Hiya, Ben. I saw pictures of it being vandalised on Facebook, and I got some cleaning materials out of the car and was down there to see what I could do. It's granite and it's got veins in it, so it was difficult to... I managed to get some paint off, but realised it needed special chemicals to get it off. I reported it to council's street team, cleansing team, and they came down with specialist chemicals and got most of it off, but it still looks a mess, and it still wants some more further clearing. But what's been brought to his attention, Ben, is there is a police investigation now taking place, but it turns out that 2 police memorials were damaged within hours of each other. The other one was of another serving police officer who were killed in the line of duty, and this was Ian Broadhurst, and his memorial were damaged as well. So the police are investigating 2 incidents of vandalism to police memorials this week.
So we just saw the picture there of the vandalised memorial you're helping to clean up. So there's been 2 separate incidents. So what kind of idiot or moron then, Paul, is doing this? What's the agenda? Who's doing it, do you think?
What's the agenda? Well, what's the agenda is antisocial behaviour in Leeds. It's getting out of control. Complaints have been made by councillors on Leeds City Council to Tracy Brabin, the Mayor of Yorkshire, and there's a lack of community on the ground. Police beating the streets, and enough is enough. It's getting as bad as London. Leeds is getting as bad as London. There's feral children out there running amok and robbing others, and it needs some firm action, Ben.
So you think this? I mean, it seems really shocking to me that you don't think it's a targeted attack on police. I mean, what? This
sounds like a targeted attack on the police officers. Yeah, it does.
So who do you think could possibly be responsible?
It's likely to be somebody that's got a grudge against the police. Doing something like that in space of a couple of hours. One was done at on Saturday night, round about 6 o'clock. That was Ian Broadhurst. And then a friend of mine were walking past a pub opposite that, and that was done last Saturday night. But it wasn't reported to police until Sunday morning. So both of those two incidents were done on Saturday night. Somebody's driven from one end of Leeds to another end of Leeds with black spray paint and done that. Shocking.
Paul, and you've, I mean, in spite of what's happened, which is absolutely disgusting, if you ask me, I don't know what kind of numbskulls are behind this kind of thing, but you've cleaned up partly the memorial you've been dealing with. I think it needs a little bit more work, does it? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's it now.
Yeah,
actually, it looks like you've done
Council Street. Yeah, Council Street team have been round and they've used some special chemicals on it, but like the embossed areas, the lines on it that you can see on that picture and the wording is still blathered in black paint. It's going to need redressing. It's going to need a professional to redress that.
OK. Paul, where can people contact you if they want to help?
Well, I believe it's in hand because I've seen messages from the family of John, and I've seen messages from other former work colleagues of John, and there is a police memorial society, and they've been advised of what's happened, and I understand that hopefully action will be taken. Hopefully, action will be taken tomorrow to try to start putting it back in the state that it were in before it was vandalised. Just shocking, disrespectful, really. I mean, these two guys just came to work to do the jobs and killed in line of duty, and for somebody to just go out and disrespectfully do this, it's just heartbreaking, really, you know.
Well, yeah, it's disgusting. Well, Paul, whilst we've got morons running around doing that, on the flip side, we've got great community stars like yourself, you know, trying to balance things out. So, Paul Cockcroft, thank you very much for your company this evening. Keep up the good work. A comment from West Yorkshire Police. They said, a spokesman said, I know I speak for everyone in West Yorkshire Police and the wider policing family when I say how appalled we are about these incidents. We are carrying out inquiries to identify who was responsible, and we're keen to hear from anyone who witnessed the incident or saw anyone acting suspiciously that could assist the investigation. Right, here is a story from The Times. It's just dropped. It's on the front page. We'll get that for you when we have it. But it says that Sir Keir Starmer is set to resist Donald Trump's demand for higher defence spending. The Prime Minister said that, said to believe that the deterioration of public finances, I guess the £22 billion black hole that he loves blabbering on about, means he can't hit a target for defence spending of 2.5% of GDP on the military by 2020. Joining me now is the panel. Former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, and political commentator and podcast host Will Kingston. Bill, Labour and Sir Keir Starmer spent the whole election campaign banging on about how they were going to increase defence spending, and now he's saying we can't.
Well, I would be very surprised if the government says that it's not going to move to 2.5%. And I speak as a former Minister of State for the Armed Forces, and I'm sceptical when I see stories like this, because the senior military are very good at lobbying for resources, and we get stories like this. However, I think what may be behind it is the larger Trump call for an increase beyond 2.5% to 5% of GDP. And there does need to be a reality check. Yes, we need to spend more money on defence, but moving from where we are now, 2.3% of GDP, to 5% of GDP would cost about £60 billion in terms of public spending. That is a colossal sum of money, and bluntly, we can't afford it.
Well, we can't afford it yet. Will, we can afford £22 billion carbon capture schemes that even eco-zealots don't like. We can afford £14 billion in public sector pay rises, £11 billion in foreign climate aid. This is a joke, isn't it? At a time when we're squaring up to Russia, you can't afford to increase your military defence spending.
Yeah, Ben, I think you've hit on it in that spending comes down to priorities. And I think the feeling amongst the electorate in the UK today is that the priorities are out of whack. When they look at spending on things like net zero, when they look at spending in areas which, frankly, aren't as important as national defence, which should be the #1 priority of any government. I think Bill is right to say that that's a very big increase in what would be a short space of time. I hope he's right to say that we will get to 2.5%. And I think Trump is right to put pressure on the NATO countries to increase their defence spending, because at the moment the US is shouldering the burden to try and maintain European security.
Yeah, and Chloe, but if there is ever a defence boost from Labour. It will come after a review and then a conversation and then a committee and then another review, and then maybe if they win a second term, it might come in the 9th or 10th year.
Yeah, I'm sure just like they're doing with social care, we'll have, you know, someone investigate and do a bunch of reports until the end of 2028. And then just before the general election in 2029, they'll say, make sure you vote us back in so that we can do all of this great defence spending. I think, Will, you're spot on that their priorities are completely out of whack with what the general public want. I feel like they're out in Davos and wherever with their technocrat mates. They are not talking to real people in this country. They don't understand what people care about. I think we've been not in a major war for so long that we have just been very, very complacent about our armed forces, and I think we need to be ready if something, God forbid, were to happen.
Yeah, OK, stick with us on Ben Leo's tonight. More front pages are on the way in just a second, including Rachel Reeves. We've already kind of touched on it so far in the show. Rachel Reeves in the Daily Telegraph. She's been accused of plotting a return to the EU by the back door. This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. During the week ahead, we hold on to unsettled weather across the UK, further wet and windy weather to come, although signs of an improvement later on in the week. At the moment, low pressure is anchored towards the west of the UK. That's dominating our weather. Tightly packed isobars indicating pretty blustery conditions, and these weather fronts moving in from the south and southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain at times. One band of rain affects Scotland tonight, giving some hill snow, particularly above about 450 metres, where we'll see some settling snow here. And another area of rain moving in from the southwest across England and Wales into the early hours, some of which could be quite heavy, accompanied by blustery winds, particularly towards the southeast. It's mostly a frost-free night, with temperatures in mid-single figures. As for Monday, well, we hold on to a very unsettled picture. Low pressure still close by towards the west of the UK. So to start with on Monday, although there'll be some brightness towards the north of mainland Scotland, the rest of the country is likely to see some showery bursts of rain, again with some hill snow in places. Across Northern Ireland, there'll be showery bursts of rain as well, and showery too across parts of Wales into the southwest of England. So it's the south and east of England, some central parts too, that are likely to see the best of the early brightness. As we go through the rest of the day on Monday, with low pressure still close by, there'll be further outbreaks of rain at times in pretty much all parts of the UK. Occasional bright spells between, still some winteriness across the hills of Scotland at times, and wherever you are, a pretty blustery day with some gales, particularly down towards the south and southwest at times through the day. And despite some sunshine at times, those temperatures will be struggling. Highs of 6 to 9 Celsius, 9 down towards the southwest. It's 48 in Fahrenheit, but add on the effect of that unsettled weather and feeling much cooler out and about. As for Tuesday, well, with low pressure still over the top of the UK, there'll be further showers to come at times. Again, some of those could be quite heavy at times. The winds do start to ease down, so probably feeling a little bit better when we get the sunshine between those showers, with temperatures still peaking at around the 10 Celsius mark. So Tuesday and Wednesday continue pretty unsettled, further rain at times, but things do start to quieten down later in the week with some sunshine around.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're
failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. More front pages have just dropped. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. This is hitting your shop shelves tomorrow. Starmer and Trump set path for state visit. The Prime Minister becomes the first European leader to speak to President in a warm and personable chat. And of course, Donald Trump praised him as doing a pretty good job. Ironically, Sir Keir Starmer tweeted some years ago that when Donald Trump praised Boris Johnson in a similar fashion, he kind of attacked Boris Johnson for it, saying, what does it say about your leadership when Donald Trump is praising you? Well, Prime Minister, it's happened to you now. So what does it say about your leadership? The Guardian. Donald Trump accused of ethnic cleansing over call for Palestinians to quit Gaza. We've touched on that already. Again, in the president's defence, he was saying that it needs a clear out, Gaza, because it's razed to the ground. There's nothing there. There's nothing there, and it's in the interest, perhaps, of the 1.5 million Palestinians to go and live somewhere they potentially might be happier and may be able to live properly. The Times. Keir Starmer set to defy Donald Trump over cash for defence. Again, Keir Starmer saying that because of the public finances in Britain, the £22 billion black hole, he can't commit to his election pledges to boost defence spending. And the Daily Star, wave of storms hit the UK, 4 storms, and the headline is, if you're listening on radio, 4 blimey. There we go. And if the weather this week was anything to go by, I've got quite a funny video to show you in just a second. Then brace yourselves for even more. Batten down the hatches. Panel, welcome back. Bill, Chloe, Will. Should we talk about this one on the front of the Daily Telegraph at the bottom here? It's, God, I don't know whether to hang my head in despair or what, but it says, police told not to say blacklist over race fears. So police officers have been told not to use the terms black sheep and blacklisted in case they offend someone. It also states, this is police guidance, it also states pregnant person, the term pregnant person, should be used instead of references to pregnant women, and Christian-centric language such as the term faith should be avoided. Chloe, at a time when Trump is taking a flamethrower to DEI and woke, what's going on here?
I mean, I'm just fed up of hearing story after story of institution after institution being taken over by woke. These people should not be spending a single minute of their time funded by taxpayer money writing up reports and recommendations about the language we should use. Pregnant persons rather than pregnant women. Go and fight knife crime. Do your actual job, not this rubbish.
Will?
A couple of things. Number one, can I get stuck into the Telegraph here? This is the front page, and they're saying that this is a 2023 diversity guide. So actually, I'm not quite sure why we're talking about it today. Maybe they've just found it. And I think the important thing is, there has been a vibe shift. It's been accelerated in the last week with Trump. But people now, and we're not just talking about GB News viewers, I'm talking about the wider population, are generally over this sort of stuff, and we're all just laughing at it. So I think if this is indeed continuing, and I don't know if it is continuing, they're going to be out of step with where the public are now in a way that they weren't, say, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
I think that the tide is turning in the general population for sure, which is great news.
Yeah.
But I think these people who live in a bubble in their workplace or in their Westminster bubble, in Whitehall, I think they haven't completely got the message yet.
The Starmer drag queen photo that Ben showed earlier in the show,
my goodness
was a very
me.
good example.
Bill, this story enrages me because I actually think equality and discrimination matter, and guidance like this is bonkers and undermines that cause. And I also pick up Will's point. And you're right to question the Telegraph. The Telegraph as a newspaper is on a bit of a journey. It used to be a mainstream right-wing but conservative newspaper. It's becoming more and more populist with articles like that which aren't necessarily based on fact.
Well, I think it's important they cover it. I mean, Will, I know you said why did they put it on the front, but I think from reading it, it's because this policy is still being enforced today. And there's a section in it where it says police officers, are also made aware of the concept of white fragility, defined in the document as, quote, a state in which some white people are unable to cope with or process the information they receive about racism.
But I think you know, whereas maybe madness. 2 or 3 years ago in polite society we may have just had to keep silent about this stuff, I think now we're laughing about it. That's the shift.
All right, let me show you these viral videos we've been collating today. Police officers were called out to reports of a fallen tree in the road this weekend amid the storms. Make that 2 fallen trees.
Oh my God!
Oh, we laugh at that, but actually that could have been very, very dangerous indeed. I mean, I'd argue it probably could have killed them. And next, sticking with the weather, this is a video of some poor soul coming out worse for wear in this week's gales. So, if you can't see, somebody is stuck under that sheet there, that garden cover, desperately trying to get out of it. I'm not kind of sure what cover it is, but there we go. I mean, goodness me, if... Thank God there was a ring camera there to capture it.
It looks like one of those modern interpretive dance routines. I can see that at the Tate Modern, potentially, you know, as some sort of exhibit.
Yeah, I mean... I stacked it. I should have got the video, but I stacked it during the icy weather a few weeks ago. I went out into the garden about 7 in the morning, went to go into the shed, and my composite decking at the back was so slippery, and I just slipped on my back like a geriatric. I was so slow to react. My feet ended up in the air.
There's footage of that, isn't there?
I put it on my Instagram.
Yeah.
I put it on my Instagram. I should have saved it for the telly, but you could hear a massive thud as well.
I saw a picture from the last storm we had a few weeks back of a lovely-looking Porsche just completely crushed by a fallen tree.
Oh, no. Yeah, Bill...
Massive mistake to park your car there.
I think I am getting old because I was so slow. It was in slow motion. I knew what was coming. I just couldn't react to it.
But when you do fall over, it does feel like slow motion. Anyone who's done it, it's almost like, you know, is this really happening?
Yeah. All right, still to come, we'll be looking ahead to what we think will dominate the headlines next week, and I have a fun little game to play for my panel. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a two-man event, but four-man's usually where we can challenge them. And, yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs. And, yeah.
So, yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad. But because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK Sport. So we're well funded now. And but, yeah, the Bob is in the back of the van behind us. So we're driving it down to St. Moritz as we speak. So, yeah, it's... That's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? What? So you've got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3, yeah.
Right, so what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power is what it's all about to get off to a good start and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Yeah. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them because we're bending them and twisting them into... It's quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible, and when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that, it's not. Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
Stiff back this morning. That's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Still with me is former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, and political commentator and podcast host Will Kingston. Right, panel, we're going to run through, I've got a little game for you. We're going to run through some headlines now that have hit the papers this week, and you need to fill in the blanks, OK? So let's kick off with the first one. Here's your first headline. So it reads, Gen Z, or Gen Z, I think it's Gen Z, isn't it, for Brits? Anyway, Gen Z. Huh?
We say Z in Britain.
Gen Z. Sorry, I'm too American.
I say Gen Z.
Gen Z, half as likely as their parents to identify as what?
Wanting to go to work.
Straight.
Homeowners.
Homeowners? Wanting to go to work straight?
Straight. They've got, as well as a million genders, they've come up with a million sexualities now.
Gen Z, half as likely as their parents to identify as, no, you're all wrong, as atheists. We are a godless nation, apparently.
Half as... No, isn't that saying
so they're becoming more religious?
Gen Z, half as likely as their parents.
Yeah.
Half as sorry, yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry, it's been a long day. Somebody get me a coffee. Something stronger. OK, next headline.
Islam's on the rise.
HMRC staff have been given 1 day off a week to promote what?
LGBTQ.
Yeah, DEI.
You've seen this, Chloe?
Ooh. Promote...
HMRC
refugee
staff
rights? I don't know.
have been given 1 day off a week to promote what? Here we go, here's the graphic. HMRC staff given 1 day a week off to promote what?
Ooh.
Picking up the phone? The answer is...
Paying your taxes?
Gender ideology.
You're kidding me.
Gender ideology.
You are kidding
You didn't know that already?
I hadn't seen that.
It's a slightly misleading headline. It's one member of staff, apparently, but it's still... very
Just
questionable.
pick up the damn phones.
This feels like it belongs in a different universe, this stuff. How are we sticking to it?
Right, let's move on to the next one. There's a photo of the King in what? Released to Mark Burns night. There's a photo...
Kilt? Yeah.
Kilt?
A dress.
Yeah, I've seen the photo, so it's a kilt. It's a lovely little
That's an easy one, surely. Is it kilt? It's New Tartan.
Yeah. It was a lovely... It was a cracking little one.
OK, and the last headline, I think it's the last one. No, it's not. A drug lord caught in Britain. A drug lord caught in Britain after wife posted what online?
Oh.
A drug lord caught in Britain after wife posted what online?
A selfie with him.
In Britain. A selfie with the drug lord.
Drugs?
Yeah, a picture of all the money, or...
OK. I'd say a holiday. Maybe, one of those expensive holidays. There we go, holiday snaps. I was right. I didn't know. It was almost like I knew the answer.
Did you see the drug dealer who's been caught now because his friend videoed him making a phone call to claim benefits whilst he had loads of cash in his hands from all the drugs?
What an idiot. You can't buy brains. Right, last headline. This is the last, I promise. Labour MP accuses David Lammy of misleading Parliament over what?
Where do you start?
Labour MP accuses David Lammy of misleading Parliament over what? Bill, let's start with you. What's your answer?
Spurs form this season. And I say that because David is a fellow Spurs supporter and he's going through hell like a...
No, Spurs. Chloe?
Gosh.
What's David Lammy been accused of misleading Parliament over?
The importance of Caribbean reparations.
His love for Donald Trump, which we all know is a lie.
I know. Well, David Lammy was saying he calls him a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, has dinner with him and says that he gave him a nice chicken dinner and then he's apparently best mates with him.
Yeah.
The answer to that is the Chagos deal. He's been accused of misleading Parliament over the Chagos deal, which, if you watched the show last night, seems to be dead and buried. Now, it's time for the big... predictions for next week. Bill, what's your big story or prediction for next week? What's going to happen in the British news cycle, do you think?
Well, I think there's a really significant story coming out this week. Sarah Sharif, the awful case of that 10-year-old girl who was brutalised and murdered by her father. A judge ruled originally that he could have custody of her, the father, and that contributed to her death. The High Court refused to publish the name of that judge, and the Court of Appeal has overturned that, and rightly his name is going to be released this week.
So the judge's name is going to be made public in the Sarah Sharif case?
Yeah, and I think that's the right decision. However, I would hope the press report it responsibly.
All right, Chloe, your prediction for next week?
So there's a story I saw which I think, if it gains traction, will really anger the British public, which is that a foreign rapist from Gambia is going to be given a huge sum of British taxpayer money.
How much?
They haven't revealed the figure yet. We've just been told by the Telegraph that it is substantial.
OK.
So this guy should have been deported. He was meant to leave the country in 2004.
Yep.
But actually, after loads of appeals, he's going to win money for being put in a detention centre by the Home Office, wrongly, apparently.
Nice, easy for some. Will, your prediction?
Rachel Reeves said this week that if she was given the choice between growth and net zero, she said growth is more important. I don't think that eco-zealot Ed Miliband would agree with that. I think there's going to be a blow-up in the Labor Party and one of them is going to lose their job over it, and I think it will be Miliband.
Yeah,
maybe not the next week, but it will.
Rachel Reeves is going to win the argument, rightly.
She's got her big speech on Wednesday, her big fiscal speech. I think she's going to announce the approval of Heathrow expansion and maybe even Gatwick Airport as well, down near my neck of the woods. Who knows? And yeah, there was an interesting story about Ed Miliband today, saying that he's doing a bit too much on the net zero front. He's being allowed to run riot and causing a bit of problems for Keir Starmer. Who knows? Just conjecture. Coming up next, it's Headliners, presented by Leo Kirst. Leo, what's coming up on your show?
Hi, Ben. We've got a cracker of a show tonight. We've got Simon Evans and Kerry Marks, two of the smartest brains in the business, and we're going to be talking about that story that Chloe was just mentioning, of the Gambian man who came to Britain, was convicted of rape in Watford and is now being given a huge payout of taxpayers' money. It's absolutely sick. Shows how soft touch Britain is. We've also got Keir Starmer in hot water for spending Burns night with a drag queen, and he's really not feeling the public sentiment. And also Rachel Reeves has complained about her nickname, Rachel from Accounts. Obviously she's far too stupid to work in accounts.
I kicked off the show by saying I don't think Sir Keir Starmer gets Britain, and do you know what? That picture of the drag queen on Burns night in Downing Street, I mean, it just personifies it for me. I'm sorry, what are you doing? Anyway, thank you for joining me this evening. Really appreciated your company. I'm back next week. Thank you to my panel, Bill, Chloe and Will. Up next, it's Headliners. That's after your weather. Very good night to you.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. During the week ahead, we hold on to unsettled weather across the UK, further wet and windy weather to come, although signs of an improvement later on in the week. At the moment, low pressure is anchored towards the west of the UK. That's dominating our weather. Tightly packed isobars indicating pretty blustery conditions, and these weather fronts moving in from the south and southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain at times. One band of rain affects Scotland tonight, giving some hill snow, particularly above about 450 metres, where we'll see some settling snow here. And another area of rain moving in from the southwest across England and Wales into the early hours, some of which could be quite heavy, accompanied by blustery winds, particularly towards the southeast. It's mostly a frost-free night, with temperatures in mid-single figures. As for Monday, well, we hold on to a very unsettled picture. Low pressure still close by towards the west of the UK. So to start with on Monday, although there'll be some brightness towards the north of mainland Scotland, the rest of the country is likely to see some showery bursts of rain, again with some hill snow in places. Across Northern Ireland, there'll be showery bursts of rain as well, and showery too across parts of Wales into the southwest of England. So it's the south and east of England, some central parts too, that are likely to see the best of the early brightness. As we go through the rest of the day on Monday, with low pressure still close by, there'll be further outbreaks of rain at times in pretty much all parts of the UK. Occasional bright spells between, still some winteriness across the hills of Scotland at times, and wherever you are, a pretty blustery day with some gales, particularly down towards the south and southwest at times through the day. And despite some sunshine at times, those temperatures will be struggling. Highs of 6 to 9 Celsius, 9 down towards the southwest. It's 48 in Fahrenheit, but add on the effect of that unsettled weather and feeling much cooler out and about. As for Tuesday, well, with low pressure still over the top of the UK, there'll be further showers to come at times. Again, some of those could be quite heavy at times. The winds do start to ease down, so probably feeling a little bit better when we get the sunshine between those showers, with temperatures still peaking at around the 10 Celsius mark. So Tuesday and Wednesday continue pretty unsettled, further rain at times, but things do start to quieten down later in the week with some sunshine around.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call